So now I want to create some more internal lines so I can create some top stitching detail on here. So just make sure this is enabled. I'm going to make sure I've got transform pattern selected, select all of these pieces, go back to my edit pattern, right click, and then you want to select offset as internal line and put this on a value of 5 and click on OK. So I'm going to be referencing this internal line to create the top stitching. So now on the rim of the cap, I'm selecting all of these edges over here, right click and offset as internal line. This time the number of offsets that I want to put that on 3 and then click on OK. So there'll be some top stitching on the rim of the cap as well. So I actually want my eyelets over here to stick out. So I'm going to just click and drag over all of these pieces, and I'm going to put the thickness over here on 3. Right, and just simulate. So I want them to be sticking out like that because that's just a lot more accurate. Now of course our button here at the top has moved, but as always you can reposition that very easily. So before we actually add our top stitching on here, especially with the brim, you'll notice that with this segment line or this internal line that was created, there's a break in these segments because of these points, and we need to make sure this is one continuous segment. So to do that, hold on shift and select all of these dots, then right click and go to convert to curve point. So now we've got one continuous line. That's exactly what we want. Now if we go to this option over here called segment top stitch, you can see I can select this entire stitching region, and if I hide this, I've officially, or should I say, I've quickly and easily created some top stitching. So I want to do that for this line and this line as well. Now you can go to your default top stitch. You can even change the shape, right? If you want to overlock stitch or something completely different, it's super easy to do. Now this does get exported out as geometry, which can sometimes make garments, a little bit heavy on export. But if you did want a solution for creating stitching like this, then here you go, and you can see just how simple it is. You can also change the color of the stitching on your cap. So I'm going to be doing that for the rest of the garment. So now I'm actually going to go back to fabric, select brim, and just copy this and then name this eyelets. And I'm going to select all of my eyelets over here and select eyelets, select that fabric, and then I can change the color. Right, and if you feel like this is still way too low poly, you can select all of your eyelets, and because it's an extremely small piece of fabric on this garment, you can even bring this particle distance down to 1. Now this is usually a particle distance that I never go down to, with complex garments, but this is such a small piece of fabric, it will still work. Your performance should still be fine, and you can see that made it nice and round. So you can bring that all the way down to 1. Right, and then I've got my top stitching on there. And you can see this cap has really started to take shape now. So the last bit of top stitching that I want to add is, I want to add some top stitching around the cap so that it looks like all of these panels are actually stitched together. So just go to your top stitch over here in the object browser, select default top stitch, then go to your segment top stitch, and we're just going to sew or add some top stitching to all of these regions. So just left click and left click on all of these regions over here. Make sure you're not missing any, just so it creates a complete top stitch. And I think these are some nice, like final touches. It's almost like adding the icing on top of the cake. It adds a lot more believability to these garments. Right, it almost looks like this garment has been stitched together. And since there's different panels, it definitely makes sense to have all of the stitching there. So there we go. And I'll just press spacebar to simulate and stop again. Right, so we got all of this additional stitching on our cap, and then you can always go back to default top stitch and you can change the color here to whatever you want. Remember, you can even change the length and the overall spacing between the stitches. Go ahead, experiment with this and see what you can end up doing. But there we go, we got some nice stitching on our cap. So I'm going to make another fabric over here for the strap in the back. If you don't have this, obviously you don't need to be doing this. So I'm going to select my eyelets, copy this, and I'll just call this strap, and just find my straps over here with these two pieces. Select strap, select my strap, and I'm going to make this a lot darker. So like that. Now those buttons really pop out. And now the buttons on the back of the strap, I also want them to have their own material. So I'll just say copy, and I'll just call this buttons back, and go and find all of those buttons. So all of these pieces, hold on shift and all of these pieces, and just change it to buttons back. Select buttons back, and I'm just going to make this a lot lighter, like that. Right, so now I can apply my own separate material onto all of these different panels and onto the rim.